You're not here by accident. People who walk alone rarely arrive anywhere by accident. Something in you, something quiet and sharp, pulled you into this video because you felt for a long time that the way you move through the world is not like everyone else. You don't need crowds to feel alive. You don't need applause to feel valid. You don't need noise to fill the space inside you. In fact, you've been withdrawing from all of that, step by step, without fully understanding why. And now, here you are, listening to a stranger explain a truth you've carried for years. Solitude is not your weakness. It is the place where the hidden part of you found its shape, and if you use it well, it becomes the deadliest advantage any person can possess. The world will tell you something is wrong with you for being like this, that you're too distant, too detached, too silent. But here's what no one wants to admit. The people who speak the loudest fear the people who say nothing. They don't fear the angry ones, or the loud ones, or the dramatic ones. They fear the ones who observe, who think, who move when necessary, not when challenged. They fear the ones who don't need external permission to act. They fear the ones like you, the ones who walk alone. You've probably noticed it. The looks you get when you slip out of the group without explaining yourself. The tension in the room when you choose not to respond to pointless arguments. The discomfort others feel when your silence forces them to sit with their own noise. People don't know how to read you, and that makes them uneasy. They're used to people exposing their thoughts like open wounds. But you? No. You keep your inner world locked. You let people interpret whatever they want because you realized early on that the more they project, the more power you gain. Machiavelli would call that a strategic fog, the kind that makes the enemy hesitate before making a move. But this didn't start with power. It started with pain. People don't become solitary for no reason. You didn't wake up one day and decide to build walls. Something chipped away at you. People who weren't who they said they were. Environments that drained you. Expectations that suffocated you. You chose solitude because the cost of staying available to everyone became too high. You were being stretched too thin, pulled too many directions, judged too quickly, understood too rarely. So you disappeared, not to hide, but to rebuild. They don't understand that part. They think your silence is emptiness, that your distance is coldness. But silence for you is construction. Distance is recovery. Solitude is the workshop where you sharpen parts of yourself no one saw coming. While others burn themselves out trying to be seen, you grew stronger by being unseen. You learned to stay quiet long enough to hear the whispers beneath people's words. You learned to watch people reveal themselves without you having to say anything at all. You learned to sit with discomfort until it became a familiar friend instead of an enemy. This is not weakness. This is refinement. The most dangerous people in history weren't the loud ones. They were the quiet ones, the ones who studied the terrain long before they stepped onto the battlefield, the ones who kept their intentions hidden until the moment of execution. Machiavelli taught that a ruler who appears calm, even when planning something ruthless, is far more effective than one who broadcasts his every move. And whether you know it or not, you've been following that rule. You've developed that calm. You've developed that ability to move without announcing anything. You've developed a form of self-control most people never touch in their lives. Your solitude hardened you, but not in the way people think. It didn't make you bitter or closed off. It made you disciplined. Disciplined with your time. Disciplined with your focus. Disciplined with your trust. You no longer let people in just because they show interest. You no longer bend because someone demands your attention. You no longer scatter your energy trying to please everyone. You've become selective in a way that looks harsh to those who don't understand the price of openness. But openness without discernment is a liability. And you, whether intentionally or not, decided you were done being a liability. Here's what people don't get. When you stop needing anyone, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability is a fortress made of smoke. No one can grab it. No one can climb it. No one can map it. You move without warning. You disappear without notice. You think without external influence. People can't anticipate your steps because your steps aren't tied to their approval. That alone makes you dangerous. That alone makes you rare. Most people act out of the need to belong. You act out of the need to stay aligned with your own reality. And because of that, your decisions cut cleaner. You say no faster. You recognize manipulation earlier. You walk away sooner. You don't stay where loyalty is one-sided, and you don't give energy to people who haven't earned it. This kind of clarity is expensive. It costs years. It costs losses. It costs versions of yourself you had to bury. But what rose from those ashes is someone others can't figure out. And that confuses them, because people want you to be simple, predictable, easy to categorize. You are none of those things anymore. Think about the moments when you realized solitude had changed you. Not with sadness, not with anger, but with a strange kind of neutrality. The way drama stopped affecting you. The way arguments lost their grip on your emotions. The way people's opinions no longer chained you to their expectations. When you detach from the noise long enough, you stop hearing it altogether. And in that silence, you gain something the world does not offer: sovereignty over your own mind. Most people never experience that. They live in a cycle of endless reactions. Someone insults them. They react. Someone praises them. They react. Someone ignores them. They react. Their entire identity is an echo of other people's behavior. But your identity lives in your internal world. You don't shift because of flattery. You don't crumble because of criticism. You don't lose your center just because someone pushes your boundaries. You've developed an internal anchor that doesn't move even when the tide rises. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how uncomfortable that makes people who rely on manipulation to get what they want? When they realize they can't pull your emotional strings, they don't know what to do with you. They try harder at first. Guilt, shame, provocation, silent treatment, whatever psychological tools they've used on others. But none of it works because you're not playing the emotional game they play. You've risen above it. You learned how to be alone without collapsing. And that makes you immune to their tactics. Machiavelli said that if you want to see someone's true nature, give them power. But the opposite is also true. If you want to see someone's true nature, take your power away from them. And when you stopped giving people access to your mind, when you stopped feeding their ego with your attention, when you stopped needing them to validate your existence, you unknowingly stripped them of power. And the reactions you saw, the confusion, the frustration, the sudden coldness, those reactions said everything. Solitude taught you how to separate your emotions from your actions, not suppress them, but separate them. You still feel, you still care, you still get hurt, but you don't let those emotions command your behavior. You observe them from a distance. You study them like a strategist studies the battlefield, and then you act with precision, not impulse. That alone elevates you above 90% of people. This is the part where your story becomes more interesting. Because solitude didn't just make you emotionally stronger, it gave you something far more powerful: perspective. When you're alone long enough, you start seeing the patterns behind people's behavior. You see who is genuine, who is pretending, who is insecure, who is silently competing, who is loyal only when it benefits them, who is using you as a placeholder for someone else. You see human nature in a raw, unfiltered way that people deeply attached to the crowd never notice. And once you see these things, you can't unsee them. It's like stepping outside the illusion everyone else is still trapped in. Your vision becomes clearer, your intuition sharper. People's intentions become obvious before they even finish speaking. And suddenly, interactions that once confused you now feel like simple puzzles you can solve in seconds. That's the power of the person who walks alone. Not that they are isolated, but that they are elevated. Eventually, something else begins to happen. You stop explaining yourself. You stop arguing. You stop trying to prove who you are. You stop trying to correct people's misunderstandings. Why? Not because you're arrogant, not because you don't care, but because you realized something crucial. Anyone who needs an explanation will never understand the explanation. And anyone who already understands you doesn't need one. So you conserve your energy. You choose silence over justification, and that silence becomes your boundary. But here's the twist. People often mistake that silence for emptiness. They think your lack of reaction means lack of depth. They assume your distance is a sign of apathy. They assume your quietness is a sign of confusion. They couldn't be more wrong. Silence is where you think most clearly. Distance is where you operate most effectively. Quietness is where you sharpen the edges of your mind. People don't realize that every time you disappear, you return with a new weapon they weren't prepared for. And then comes the transformation you never expected. You start enjoying your own company. You start liking the freedom of not having to compromise your values. You start appreciating the peace that comes from knowing no one has access to your mental space unless you allow it. You start understanding that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Loneliness is when you crave others. Solitude is when you return to yourself. This is where the Machiavellian part truly emerges. Because once you no longer fear solitude, you become capable of something the rest cannot do. You choose your alliances based not on fear, not on insecurity, not on desperation, but on strategy. You don't let people in because you need them. You let people in because they add something meaningful to your life. And when someone no longer does, you walk away without hesitation. That ruthlessness is not cruelty. It is clarity. You've also learned the art of invisibility. Not disappearing in a dramatic way, but in a strategic way. You don't reveal what you're building. You don't show your progress until it's undeniable. You don't share your goals with people who would rather sabotage them than support them. Most people want attention for every step of the journey. You want results. You move in silence not because you're afraid of being seen, but because you understand the power of not being monitored. You're not a ghost. You're a shadow. A shadow moves with purpose, not noise. A shadow watches without being detected. A shadow sees what the light hides. That's you now. You're no longer tangled in the need to be understood. You're no longer exhausted by the chaos of constant interaction. You're no longer pulled into meaningless conversations or small dramas. You operate with a kind of cold efficiency that others find intimidating, even if they can't put their finger on why. And then the most important shift happens. You start valuing your time above all else. You stop throwing hours away on people who drain you. You stop chasing people who can't see your worth. You stop entertaining conversations that don't lead anywhere. Time becomes sacred because solitude taught you that every hour you waste is an hour you can never recover. And when you understand the value of time, your life gets sharper, cleaner, more intentional. People will say you've changed. They'll say you became distant. They'll say you became cold. They'll say you're not the same person. And they'll be right. You're not. You're stronger. You're clearer. You're more dangerous. You're someone who has walked through the fire of solitude and emerged with a mind that can no longer be manipulated, a heart that can no longer be broken by fragile people, and a presence that can no longer be ignored. This is the life of someone who walks alone, not because they were rejected, but because they chose a path where clarity and freedom matter more than the illusion of belonging. You're not alone in the way they think. You're alone in the way warriors are, in the way strategists are, in the way leaders are, before the world recognizes their leadership. You walk alone not because no one wants to join you, but because the path you walk requires a kind of strength most people haven't built yet. And that's why you found this video. Not because you were lost, but because you're finally beginning to understand who you've become. The kind of person who doesn't need noise to feel important. The kind of person who doesn't need company to feel whole. The kind of person who walks alone because that's where their power lives. If something in this message hit you like the truth you've been trying to put into words, don't ignore that. Subscribe to Psyche Nomad to stay connected to the part of you that refuses to soften, refuses to shrink, refuses to be controlled. You're walking a sharp path, and you shouldn't have to walk it blind. And when the next video pops up, don't hesitate. Watch it. Keep sharpening your edge. Keep deepening your silence. Keep moving like the threat they can't predict. The world never sees the lone wolf coming until its shadow is already on their doorstep.